So I think no further ado with those opening remarks. I'll ask candidate number 1, Jason Lagadoo, to make his speech, please.
Thank you, John. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
You can stand or sit or whatever you prefer. And can you turn your microphone? Is the microphones all on? Can I just check that? Yeah. Okay, right. Thank you.
Right. Our island's future hinges on the decisions as electorate in choosing candidates you feel will represent your needs. The 8 candidates for District 1 before you are either former sitting or belong to a political party, leaving only one new independent candidate that actually lives in our district. That's where I come in. I believe we should have local representation from within District 1, hence my standing, with people that can demonstrate a mature, business-like accountability. After all, managing community carries tremendous responsibility, as people's livelihoods are at stake, your livelihood. Do you really want to allow past discontent in our government to continue, or allow party politics or immaturity to undermine constitutional values or control your future? Jersey tends to be perceived by many outsiders as an island full of wealthy people. The truth, as most of us are aware, is far from that. It is only a minor percentage of the populace that actually have these resources, leaving the majority of the population, in general, struggling to make ends meet. I have no argument with the capitalistic economy or people accumulating wealth. My argument is with those of us who form the majority of the population that throughout life contribute to the government's demands for monies to only find our funds being wasted. Whilst I may be new to politics and not have all the answers, I do believe our government should lead by example. We have all seen the results of the incumbent politicians' decisions. There are a lot of questions that need answering, but one element that keeps rising its head is dissatisfaction of all of us in the apparent failure of government to curb wasting our monies on the one hand and lacking delivery of services on the other. For example, the new hospital, Fort Regent and immigration have all failed to yield positive direction. Our employment and benefits and pensions appear lack of clarity and support, with there being argument for a living wage, income support to be increased, yet pensioners aren't being afforded the same value. I appreciate there will always be a need for some people to have support from the state, both short and long term. But to have pensioners expected to go cap in hand, that's just not right. The current taxation regime seems to be exploiting many of the vulnerable lower paid sectors with the outrageous GST on food and life's true essentials. Even the UK VAT respects people's right to exist. Other taxes also need a good tidy up. We all understand that society needs taxation. All we want is clear accountability and not to be treated like idiots by hiding how much we're actually being charged. I feel that the government, past and present, are out of touch with the reality of life and seem to have failed in their duty of care to honour their contracts to us all. My campaign is based on integrity and accountability, which I feel is sadly lacking in the present system of the Council of Ministers. Upon successful election, I will endeavour to seek balanced approach to the introduction and support of policies that affect us all and encourage local initiatives that improve and support our local community needs. There has to be a better way of doing things. I stand before you to ask for your support with your vote. Every single link in a chain is just as important as the next. Without just one link, the chain fails. I would hope to be the link that succeeds, and with your belief and trust in me, along with your valued participation, we can pull together, because your success is my success. Thank you.
Can we have candidate number 2, please, Russell Levy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your re-election to the States. We've missed you for the last 3 years, and we could have done with you in this district with all our fights on planning, etc. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, 3 years ago to this very week, I was on my feet in the States Chamber proposing my very first proposition to the States, which was for £150,000 to fund an area improvement action plan for Havre Départ and Green Street. 3 years ago to this week. And yesterday, I was standing on the bridge of the Lido, along with Deputy Martin and Deputy Wickenden, with the surveyors for the feasibility study that it has taken us 3 years to get the money for, £155,000, no thanks to the government. But we have got that money. It's took 3 years. I lost my proposition, but only 3 votes. By only 3 votes. But it put the issue on the map. And we have this feasibility now study happening. And we were talking to the surveyors, and I had a kind of seminal moment because I thought, wow, this could be the dawning of a new era for this area. It really could. I believe it could. I believe it's good news. And they will be consulting with you. They'll be coming to the Havre Départ Improvement Group meetings. There'll be meetings announced. And we have got to keep the pressure up. Because one thing it is to get the £155,000 for the study, it's quite another to get the, I think they've earmarked £500,000, but I think we're going to need more. It's another thing to get that money to put into action and deliver the feasibility study for this area. And it's absolutely vital that that happens. And I tell you, if I get back with Deputy Wickenden and Deputy Martin, nobody is going to mess with us. We're going to get that money. And we're going to make sure that that feasibility study is delivered, because the people living on Green Street and Havre Départ Road have suffered for too long. It has got to be sorted out. Every time I speak to somebody on Green Street, they say, when are you going to sort this road out? And what is amazing to me is that it's taken 3 years, and that the government announced in 2014, the new government, that St Helier was going to be one of their key 4 priorities. The regeneration of St Helier. That was a con. They've done nothing. I lost my proposition. The ministers were all lined up against me because they said their new future St Helier initiative would do all the work. And the deputy needn't bother with this. We'll take care of it. Future St Helier has so far delivered nothing. It's been a waste of time so far. Let's see if they come up with anything in the future. What would have been better? Because we have a master plan for St Helier, for the North of Town master plan. I urge you to take a look at it if you haven't, because that is a blueprint to show how St Helier can be developed. The plan for Bath Street through to David Place is fantastic. Tree-lined avenues, wider pavements, proper traffic management. That's the sort of thing we need for Havre Départ Road and for Green Street. And the government needs to listen to the community's own vision for its neighbourhood. Havre Départ and Green Street has to be something more than somewhere where other people drive through to get to town or get to work. I think the other issues that matter to you the most are the cost of living, and the next government has got to tackle the cost of living, housing and immigration, and hopefully we'll get to those subjects in question time. I hope you'll consider me for one of your votes. Thank you.
Next, candidate number 3, John McNichol, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that it's time that we had a truly representative assembly that reflects a true cross-section of our community. People from all backgrounds and all social class. Traditionally, wealth and privilege have been well represented in Jersey politics. Some might say overrepresented. So it's time to redress the balance. Now, I come from a solidly working class background. I served 6 years in the military, in the army, including 3 operational tours of duty, 2 in Northern Ireland and 1 with the United Nations peacekeepers. And there I learned the value of teamwork, tenacity, determination, and the power of people coming together to achieve a shared objective. And since arriving in Jersey 32 years ago, I have worked in frontline services in public transport and more extensively in health, working with some of Jersey's most vulnerable people. Ladies and gentlemen, I know what it means to work hard for modest reward in challenging environments. I know what it means to live payday to payday and to struggle to pay bills. Life has become increasingly difficult for many on the island over the last number of years, and real hardship is set in. We need to act, and we need to act decisively. We must address the scourge of low pay, insecure work, and crippling housing prices. I intend to make that my focus. We need to ensure that people are paid enough to live on. They have agency in their own lives so that they can plan their families and plan their futures. Enough with below cost of living pay awards dressed up as pay rises for hard-pressed nurses, teachers and public sector workers. Reform Jersey has a blueprint for real change. It's not a wish list. It's a set of policies that will give us an economy that works for everyone. If elected, I will work tirelessly to implement those policies laid out in our manifesto. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in a long, long time, we have a real choice, so let's not squander it. Please consider voting for me and my Reform Jersey candidates on the 16th of May. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have, please, candidate number 4, Jan Mash, please.
Good evening. My name is Jan Mash and I'm standing as a Reform Jersey candidate. I'm currently a mature student at the Highlands College and I've been studying media for the past 2 years. Before that I was working full-time in a low-wage job. I've always been in some form of employment since the age of 16, with my last part-time job being in the tax office. Coming from a low-income background and living in social housing all my life, I am fully aware of the difficult decisions that were made by the states. Decisions that were not difficult for those who voted for them, but were difficult for ordinary working families. As a mature student at Highlands College, I am more than aware of the cutbacks in education and the hurdles people have to go through to either retrain or re-enter education. I am running because I, like the majority of people who sit at home on election day, feel that the electoral system of the so-called independents have failed us. Despite the tough talk last election, too many homes on this island are still damp, dirty and cold. Food bank use is at its highest ever. Rent poverty is at its highest ever. In-work poverty is at its highest ever. Too many people are either on 0 hours contracts or working 2, sometimes 3 jobs to make ends meet. Too many sole traders and small business owners are going into debt, and the squeeze on expendable incomes felt by lower and middle income earners is only making that problem worse. The more and more of the so-called middle class have seen their incomes decline, leaving them in the impossible situation of being asset rich but income poor. If the trends of declining living standards carry on, it will be my generation who lose out the most. None of these issues I've listed were inevitable or acts of God. They came about because unaccountable politicians who claim to be for change at election time do nothing after they're elected. I'm running because this needs to change. The first hurdle to change is to turn our unaccountable independent political system into a party political system. To change from a system of random people saying random things into a system in which there are clear, coherent choices come election time. You may not know me, but you know what I stand for, purely because I stand as a part of a political party. No individual knows all the answers, and they are rarely effective in achieving change on their own on the big issues. I am a member of a team made up of sitting deputies, teachers, finance workers, small business owners, students, nurses, support workers, single mothers, and shop workers. Because of this, if we are elected as a party into the states, we can bring a unique perspective to the states when debating and voting on the big issues. My pledges to you are of those of every Reform Jersey candidate here tonight. I'm pledging to start dropping constituent surgeries, reduce the cost of GP visits for pensioners and low-income families, introduce an empty property tax and freeze social rents, reduce social security contributions for the self-employed, reform our tax system so everyone pays their fair share. Those are only a few pledges from Reform Jersey's 10 key manifesto pledges. We can't achieve our pledges unless we have a team in the Assembly. Don't just vote for me, vote for the team. Vote for Reform Jersey to Reform Jersey on May the 16th. Thank you.
Candidate number 5, please, Nick Lacornu.
This lunchtime on BBC Radio Jersey election special, Deputy Russell Labby announced that he and our 2 deputies from No. 1 St Helier had formed themselves into a new political party, with Senator-to-be Tracy Valois as their leader, with ambitions to be Chief Minister. So new is this party, it has yet to be named. Suggestions on the postcard, please. The new solidarity was manifest yesterday as the Gang of 4 marched around Havre in a show of solidarity, delivering each other's election manifestos. Let's have a look at that party's election record. In March 2014, I was elected as deputy in St Helier, in this district. At the first meeting of the states that I attended, I asked a question. Deputy Scott Wickenden did not ask his first question for over a year. In the last 2 years, Deputy Wickenden has asked only one question. By ministerial order, the Social Security Minister Susie Pinnell increased the eligibility qualification period for unfair dismissal from 6 months to 1 year. This was done in spite of the recommendations of the Employment Forum. In particular, it denied seasonal workers' right to protection. Deputy Jeff Sudden brought this issue back to the Straits for debate on the 21st of January 2015 to return the qualifying period of 6 months. The States rejected Deputy Sudden's proposition by 36 votes to 8. Deputy Scott Wickenden voted with Minister Pinnell. Deputy Russell Labby was en défaut, absent without a reason for that entire day in the States. All our sitting deputies have poor attendance records. On the 6th of October 2015, as a backbencher, Deputy Sam Mezek brought an amendment to retain the single-parent component. The single-parent component of income support was £40 a week. He lost heavily. Deputy Scott Wickenden voted against Mezek's proposition. Deputy Russell Labby, present for the previous 9 votes that day, slipped out of the chamber and missed the vote. On the 8th of October 2015, the Social Security Minister Susie Pinnell brought a proposition to phase out the single-parent component over 3 years. This meant a reduction from £40 per week to where it is now, £10 a week. Deputy Scott Wickenden was not present for the vote. Deputy Russell Labby voted alongside Deputy Pinnell to phase it out. On the 17th of January 2018, on a vote of 24 to 21, the single-parent component was reinstated on a scrutiny panel proposition brought by Deputy Richard Renouf. From this June, single parents will get back their £40 component. This was a very close vote, 3 votes. Where were our deputies? Deputy Judy Martin was en défaut, absent without excuse all day. Deputy Russell Labby was absent from the chamber at the crucial moment of the vote. The point I'm making is this, that our deputies are not turning up for vital votes and consequently are letting down some of the poorest and most vulnerable people. I'm a lawyer. I fight for the rights of employees in the Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal. I provide my skills without charge to people with few resources and connections. For over 25 years, I've been campaigning for social justice in this island. I'm committed to fighting for the interests of working people, pensioners, and the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Candidate number 6, please, Kelly Langdon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to follow such a passionate speech. As Winston Churchill once said, there is nothing wrong with change if it is in the right direction. Think back 4 years ago, only 29% of St Helier residents came out to vote. Imagine if that number was 60, 70, or even 80%. What would the last 4 years of Jersey look like? Imagine if everyone who wrote a post on social media about their recent struggles due to the current government came out and voted for positive change. Now stop imagining, because not only is this opportunity real, but it is possible. As a Jersey local, I am proud of my island. I am proud to have lived here for 26 years, gone to school here, and worked in a multitude of different sectors in Jersey. I'm a proud townie, living in St Helier all my life, and always declaring that St Helier is the best parish amongst the rest of them. When travelling overseas and being asked if I hail from New Jersey, I'm proud to tell people about our history and how the original is always better than the sequel. However, over recent years, when talking with family and friends, I found it more and more difficult to come to the defence of Jersey's government. When talking about equality, diversity, policies and law changes, it's getting harder and harder to defend our island with the decision that's being made by its government. Therefore, I am standing for deputy. For the last few years, I have read the headlines about our island: increasing house prices, snowballing taxes for locals, taxpayers' money is being wastefully spent, and further distrust in the local government by the public. The States needs to sit up and listen to the people of Jersey. They need to start hearing what you have been shouting since day one: more equality, better affordable housing, fairer taxation, free university tuition, an increase in minimum wage. I could go on, but I only have a 4-minute slot to speak. As someone who has lived and worked in Jersey and been politically motivated in all my decisions, I believe that this is the perfect time for someone like me to represent you in the States. I am someone that has lived through the hardships that have been created by the current government. I've had my tax increased to an unreasonable amount. I was unable to attend university due to the lack of funding because I was in full-time employment. I have worked minimum wage jobs and still tried to save. I've had my rent increased, and due to the high cost of living over here, I'm finding it extremely difficult to save each month to afford the ever-increasing deposit needed to buy a one-bedroom flat over here. I know how it feels to get up in the morning and feel like you've fallen into the finance industry, because if you follow your passion, there's no way you will ever be able to afford to buy a house. I know how it feels to go home every night to another bill on the doorstep and figure out how you're supposed to budget for emergencies as well as live comfortably. What I don't know is why we've been made to live this way. Let me be your voice in the States and come to the polling stations on the 16th of May to vote for the positive change you want to see for Jersey. Please come out and vote not only for me, but all of the reformed Jersey candidates you see before you. And remember, there is nothing wrong with change if it is in the right direction. Thank you.
Can I ask you to make sure you turn your mobile phones off, please? Could I now call candidate number 7, Judy Martin.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and good evening, fellow candidates, and thank you for coming tonight. In 1995, I was asked by the then Deputy Alan Brecken to join the States Tenants Action Group, and I worked all around with the States Tenants, the Tenants Association and the Jersey Rights Association with Deputy Dorey. So I had 5 years experience of politics and working for people, not being paid. And then I'd helped in 1999 Ted Vibert and Paul Leclerc to get into the seats in your district. Unfortunately, Ted Vibert got ill and people asked me to stand. I did. I went in the by-election and you voted for me on the 3rd of May 2000. And I have fought in this government for not putting the rents up to 90%, not taking away single parents' allowances, fighting an uphill struggle for this district for 18 years. It's not always been easy. I used to work with, he was then Deputy Paul Routier on the first Havre Par working group. We were supported up at South Hill then by the Department of Infrastructure, well now the Department of Infrastructure. We don't even have an officer now, but we do have a good support from the town hall and their staff. It's fantastic. And the residents come down. When we have issues, we had Andium down here, we filled this room. They were shouted at and they took it, and they needed to take it because what they're doing is putting 150 homes where there's 53. knocking doors around Havre Park, and we're not a party. I work very well with my other 2 deputies, and I'm sorry if Mr. Lecornu doesn't like that, but that's the way it is. And I'm going to say that now, it's no party. But I'm telling you now, I have worked in 6 different governments with different representatives, always had a good one. And the other one sometimes turns up, sometimes doesn't even stay that long. So you do have issues with housing and overcrowding. We have the money now for a plan. The remit is to make sure that this area is, it goes back to what it was. It's a place people want to come and visit. It's the seaside, Havre Park, and we represent the waterfront as well. But look what the waterfront gets spent on it. This is the poor relation, and I fought for that. So, you know, everything is getting worse, but you can only do what you can do. You can vote, you can say what you're going to do, but I did have a proven track record 5 years before you elected me. And you elected me over 4 Jersey businessmen who did make a lot of promises, but you didn't know. So really, all I can say is you will get more of the same. Other candidates don't think that I've represented you. It is your choice. I look forward to seeing you on the 16th of May, or if it's, you prefer to pre-poll, but I won't be changing. And that is all I can promise you. Thank you.
Can we have, please, candidate number 8, Scott Wickerton.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. My name is Scott Wickerton. I've been honoured to serve as your Deputy in St Helier District 1 for the last 3.5 years alongside Deputy Judy Martin and Deputy Russell Labby. I hope you will agree that we have worked as a very effective team to represent you, our constituents. I'm seeking re-election and would like you to consider my track record and future vision when deciding who to vote for on the 16th of May. I'm a man who's not afraid of taking on responsibility and making hard decisions, which I feel I've evidenced by my performance as your deputy this last term. Since the last election, I've undertaken many roles and responsibilities. I was formerly the Vice Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, which I left when the Chief Minister asked me to take up responsibility for the e-government programme and the Jersey digital sector. I'm currently a member of the Planning Committee, the Privileges and Procedures Committee, the Jersey Police Authority, and I'm Chairman of the Ecology Trust Fund. I, with Deputy Labby and Deputy Martin, have campaigned against the overdevelopment of Le Collet and Gas Place. We have fought alongside Simon Crowcroft, the Constable, to get the States of Jersey to pay parish rates, which has allowed us to fund the Havre Park Village Improvement Plan. I believe Jersey deserves politicians that are willing to step up, take responsibility and make hard decisions, not just shout from the sidelines. St Helier was given a priority with the Council and Minister's strategic plan. However, that's all that happened. I'll be proposing a fund is created in the next medium-term financial plan for future St Helier projects. Too many times over this last term, St Helier residents have been let down due to the funds in the strategic reserve having been pre-allocated. We don't know how St Helier's built environment will change over the next 4 years, but it's important that we have these funds available for the changes you would like in the future. I will petition to have a car park created in a collet to give better facilities for you, the residents of the area, and help rejuvenate accessibility to our beautiful Havre Park. If re-elected, I'll want to continue working in the digital sector. I want to help carry on the work that I've started to get our government services online so you can access them where you want and when you want. At the same time making the efficiencies that can be done by digitising and the savings that it will do in running of the services. Please consider Labby, Martin and Wickerton when you go to vote on the 16th of May. Thank you.
Before we move to questions, I'd like to thank all the candidates for keeping to time. That will certainly help the flow of the meeting. I should have said put your mobile phones on silence, please, rather than turn them off. It just helps avoid disrupting the candidates. So we have a roving mic, and I think you need to use it, please, so that your question is captured properly on the video. I'm going to take two questions. I'd like to give preference to St Helier No.1 district residents first, please. Would you like to show in your hands before I see, and I'll try and spread the questions around on the table. We've got a hand towards the back there. I saw the first, the gentleman, his hand on his head there.
Okay, here goes. I've been resident in this area for 3 to 4 years since returning to the island after doing some travelling. Prior to that, I worked in education for 15 years. I don't work in education anymore, but my question is this. How do you understand the needs of this community? What have you done? And we've heard some examples from various candidates of the things that they've done to support people within this district or within St Helier. So what I'd like to understand, and by way of example, perhaps you tell us what working parties, groups and associations you've attended or supported. Thank you.
Okay, so a question on the candidate's record there in this district. Is there, the question I saw, a gentleman on this table here, gentleman there with glasses.
Jersey Development Holdings has bought the island's coastline for £22,500. Does anyone have any plans to oppose this? Or?
Sorry, can I make sure I get your question correct? Jersey Development Holdings have
bought Jersey's coastline for £22,500. It was mentioned in the Jersey Evening Post supplement.
They bought the coastline for $22,000.
Yes,
that's your
that's
question.
right.
What is your question?
Well, isn't there some way of opposing this, or ensuring that the public get access? I suspect there's going to be some sort of restriction for the public.
Okay, well, I'll have to leave it to candidates to see if they can answer your question. So you want to know about Jersey Development Holdings. I start with candidate number 5. Oh, sorry, I'll let the timekeeper get back to the... sorry. If there's a volunteer to help with the roving mic, it'd be useful for the next batch of questions, please. Right, candidate number 5, Nick Lacornia, please.
Okay, what have I done? Well, I've been campaigning for social justice for 25 years. I mentioned that in my speech. I'm an employment lawyer. I represent employees in the employment tribunal, often for no charge, collecting unfair wages, doing unfair dismissals, and bringing discrimination cases. I think that's important. It's a contribution back to the community. I once worked in finance, which I didn't like particularly. I didn't like the law either. I now find it very fascinating because it has a real purpose. I'm a regular attendee at the scrutiny meetings, and I comment on the Politics Jersey Facebook page. I'm constantly engaged in political change to modernise, democratise this island, which is mine, which is my home, and which I want to see change because it is ruled by a small, narrow elite who represent the few. The shoreline, well, there was a problem some 10, 20 years ago that a feudal landlord had somehow acquired certain rights and they had to be bought off. Complete absurdity of the Jersey antiquated law. I'm not sure what's happened now. Why have they acquired land that actually is ours and should be ours already? Perhaps they've acquired it because they want to be independent, because it once belonged to the Crown. I'm not sure. Maybe other candidates have got more to say on that particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate number 6, Kelly Langdon, please.
I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be sitting down for questions because I think I've pulled something in my knee earlier on, so I hope no one minds. In relation to what I've done in St Helier to make it a better economy for all, I'm a regular individual in any Women in Politics meetings. I'm an individual in Jersey in transition as well, so I make sure that I'm creating community, making sure that we are being as environmentally friendly as possible. I constantly call myself a bit of an eco-warrior and constantly tell my other half to stop using single-use plastic, much to his frowning. I will say as well, I am obviously a member of Reform Jersey. I have been for a good few years. I work as a senior compliance officer in a local law firm. So even though that isn't helping the general public, I do keep the lawyers out of prison, which is quite interesting to say. I also attended the Equal Rights March that happened a good few years ago. If you see any of the Reform Jersey Facebook posts, you'll notice me on the front. Unfortunately, I'm there all with Sam Mezek and Monty Tadia. So it snapped me at a very awkward moment. I think I'm halfway through a speech, so I'm pulling a very unattractive face. And I always get people to register to vote. So I always say to people that if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. It's simple as, if you don't vote, you've completely vetoed your right to complain about the state of the current government. In relation to the Jersey Development Holdings, I wasn't aware of this. I will be completely honest. I wasn't aware that a private company could purchase public land. It does belong to the Crown. I don't understand how it should be allowed that a private company can pay a certain amount to purchase our coastline. So what I would love to do, if it's okay, is get your contact details and have a word with you afterwards to see how you and I can focus on this to make sure it benefits the public going forward.
Thank you. Yes, well, as I said in my... Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Can I go?
Candidate 7,
sorry.
Judy Martin. We can start the clock then.
I'm so sorry. There was me eager. Yeah, as I said in my opening speech, I was infamous by fighting off housing trusts before I was elected to the States. I worked with Andre Ferrari and Alan Brecken and Jerry Dorey, and eventually, all these years later, after we sold off land for £10 a plot, I'm told you were right, but that's no good. What have I done in the last session? Well, again, it was as soon as the Social Security Minister, I found out, was taking away or trying to take away the whole of the TV licences for over 75s, I took a proposition. And I won that by 1 vote. But you have to take people with you. And I got some of the ministers on my side and assistant ministers. That's what you need to do. And in this session as well, I've given back, which was holding families back, children with a disability, their rights in their own name. It doesn't matter what their parents earn, they get their money, and that is how it should be. It used to be like that before they introduced income support, and it took all them years to fight it. There was people protected on the interim or on the old benefit, but these were new people, new children with disabilities. Got that back for them. As for the foreshore, I'm not quite sure about Jersey development. The Crown gave Jersey back, and it's being, I think, managed by DFI, and they're putting out a foreshore tax, which anyone who's encroaching onto it. So I'm not sure about this buying the land, because the land has been given back to Jersey, but we have to look into that, because I don't know about that unless it's been reported wrong, because there is a problem that the land that was given back is now being charged. People are saying they called it encroaching. Thank you.
Number 8, Scott Wickenden, please.
Thank you, John. So what have I done to support the district? Well, I suppose myself, Deputy Martin and Deputy Larry help organise the Seaside Festival for something to do in the summer. We have our Half-to-Pie Improvement Group, which is on the first Thursday of every month here. So we have that at 7 o'clock every time. So that's about hearing the views of you, our residents, and what your concerns are, and helping you fix those problems or raise them. Organising the Le Collette low-rise petition and supporting and working to try and stop the overdevelopment of Le Collette low-rise. I'm on the Jersey Police Authority, so I bring up issues of policing, because I know we have problem with antisocial behaviour down on the Havre Lido during those meetings with the Chief of Police. I represent constituents, it's my work as a politician, and I also brought a private member's proposition to stop a 400% increase in planning appeals, so that you're not having to pay an exorbitant amount of money if there are developments anywhere near your house. As far as the coastline goes, I don't think I've got much more to add to Deputy Martin in that. I wasn't aware of it. I don't buy the JEP, and until they change their sensational ways, I probably won't either. But it's definitely worth looking. I haven't seen a ministerial decision. I would have thought this would have come from DFI. It will have to be looked into, but I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate number 1, Jason Lagadou, please.
Thank you. How do I understand the needs of District 1? Well, basically I've been a resident of St Helier over my life for 28 years, and 22 of those years is actually in District 1. I live, breathe and understand everything that happens around here. Well, I say understand, not 100%, nobody understands 100%. But the traffic, the parking, the noise, the Le Collet smell, everything that's happening around there is what I have to suffer, the same as other residents in this area. There's just too much happening in this area that's not really accounted for. Looking at the foreshore issue, I am aware that it was Jersey's coastline was owned by the Crown, and through the media, as we're all aware, it was handed back to the people of Jersey. With that, then all of us, whether we're residents or visitors, we should all have the right to be able to access the foreshore. And with a couple of the other comments that have been made on the panel, the situation of a private company buying it and owning it, no, that's completely wrong. We should have that as in public ownership. It's not an idea. Next thing we'll be having the roads privatised and the pavements privatised and everything else privatised, which is not the correct way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Russell Labby, please.
Well, very soon after getting elected, Richard, I took the chair of the Havre Park Improvement Group and regularly, obviously, attend that. And I tried, with the help of Deputy Martin, Deputy Wickenden, always attend as well. And what we've tried to do is raise the profile of the group. And I think probably the La Collet campaign defined my role in the district. And I keep saying me and I, but Nick may scoff, but you can't get things done in the States unless on your own. And it is unusual that district deputies all work together. It's actually pretty unique in the last assembly. And if you look at the other two St Helier districts, their deputies are not united. In this district, Deputy Wickenden, Deputy Martin and I have fought together, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, supported each other on each other's initiatives. We've fought together, and we've been, consistently, 100% of the time, when it's been an issue with St Helier, we're together on it. And I do believe that we have been a force to be reckoned with in the States. Ironically, the La Collet debate, the proposition that I took on the La Collet issue, to save some open green space there, to make sure that the development wasn't as dense as it's going to be. We won that debate, and people were shocked. We won that debate, and the Council of Ministers went ahead with it anyway, and ignored the will of the Assembly. I think that's shameful. The Gas Place fight also we fought together. We helped those Tunnel Street residents with their appeal. I'm sorry I've run out of time for the foreshore thing. I think it's highly dodgy. I think the SOJDC are dodgy. I don't like them selling off the family silver and increasing their bonuses.
Thank you. John McNichol, please.
Okay. The first question, what have I done within the district? Well, I've worked within the Special Needs Service for the last 17 years, and we have two homes that are very active within this district, one in Roseville Street, which has now been taken over by mental health, and one down at the waterfront. I've worked extensively in those, dealing with some of the most challenging and complex needs, special needs patients on the island. But it's not what I've done, it's what I intend to do and what we intend to do as a party at Reform Jersey. And that is to address the appalling levels of inequality in this district that's having such a corrosive effect on people's lifestyles. What we like to call the triple whammy of low pay, poor housing and insecure work. And we have a joint commitment and a deep desire to address these issues head on. And if you read our manifesto, is quite clear how we're going to do this. We're going to raise the minimum wage, we're going to freeze rents, and we're going to end the scourge of insecure work. As for the second point, I mean, I don't agree with privatising public land for whatever reason. But, you know, other than that, I think that Jersey residents should always maintain their right to access to their own coastline. But other than that, I don't know. I didn't know anything about it, to be honest.
Thank you. Jan Mash, please.
Well, as a born and bred townie, I don't actually think that the concerns of people of this side of town are actually that much different to the concerns of people at First Tower or people at Gas Place. I mean, at the end of the day, all of town is overbuilt and is has a pressure on infrastructure. As for what have I done in politics, which I can only really answer because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think all humans are humans, no matter what part of the island you live in. And that is, I've been a part of Reform Jersey for the past 4 years. I've been campaigning and, you know, campaigning with Reform Jersey on, you know, the things that we want to see change in our island, you know, the change in regards to low pay, high rents, and the cutbacks in public services. And also, as someone, I think most people can probably appreciate, as someone who has, you know, worked jobs where you work all hours, or in jobs, or where, let's say, you're doing 35 hours a week at college, then you're doing another 20 hours a week on top of that, working a part-time job. It's kind of hard to, let's say, get involved with community groups when your entire day is just, you know, from morning, you know, getting up at the morning and finishing at night, and you've got no other time for yourself during then. As for the foreshore, as for the Jersey Development Holdings, I don't actually read the JP, I read the bailiwick, so I'm not, I don't actually know the complete technicalities of this. But if it's publicly owned, it should be for public use. We have a government that thinks that when you take, for example, the waterfront development and the fact that we wanted a hospital there, the hospital site, they think we have a current government that thinks that it would be a better use to put private luxury flats there rather than, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think we're ready now for the second round of questions. Obviously, in phrasing your questions, can you please make sure you phrase them that they can be addressed by all candidates, please? So hands up, please. I want to try and spread it around the room. Any more hands? Put your hands up just before I take calls there. Right, okay, we've got a spread. So start with the lady in the front, please.
Thank you. Will the candidates, if successful, give up their current full-time occupations to become full-time career politicians?
And then back table behind, the lady there with the... there we are, that's it, you got it.
Thank you very much. Asbestos is responsible for most horrendous cancers, which are covered by statutory compensation schemes in other jurisdictions. Would you support the implementation of such a scheme in Jersey to bring it into line with the UK?
Okay, so we've got two questions. One on your intentions to, if you're elected, to work career full-time for the states, and the other question on the statutory scheme for compensation of asbestos. Is that right? Right, okay, so make sure I get my list right. We'll start, please, with candidate number 2.
This is my full-time job. I don't have another job. I've been self-employed all my life, all my working life, and this weirdly the job, they call this self-employed as well. If in the holidays I can do the odd theatre gig as a theatre director, then I've occasionally been able to maybe do one of those or a year, and the odd one day. But it's actually all-encompassing, this job. It's a full-time job. I wonder if you're the same lady who asked the question about asbestos 3 years ago when we had this hustings in this very building. All I can say is that I would support a similar statutory compensation scheme as is in the UK, and I'd like to know more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. John McNichol.
For the first question, yeah, serving the island's a full-time job. So, yeah, I wouldn't be going back to working in the special needs service. I believe that if you're going to commit to this job, you commit to it 100%, and there's a lot of work to do on the island to address, you know, the very real issues that many people are facing. The second one, unfortunately, asbestosis, it can take years to show symptoms. So, you know, you need any exposure that you have to it. It needs adequate screening, and it needs to be properly monitored. So I would definitely support any people who feel that they've been exposed to asbestos to be able to be tested, to be able to be screened for it, and of course to introduce an adequate compensation scheme.
Thank you. Jan Mash, please.
For the first question, absolutely yes. To be quite honest, I've been quite inspired by the party's current sitting members, Sam Ezek, Montfort Hadier and Jeff Southern, who by a country mile have asked the most questions and put in the most propositions, and at the end of the day you need to work full-time to do that. As for the asbestos, absolutely yes. We should bring our regulations in line with other jurisdictions. The Jersey has a problem in lacking with regulations with our other jurisdictions. For example, let's say look at workers' terms and conditions in the UK. Currently, if a company comes and buys up your business, you don't have security in your job, and you don't have security in your terms and conditions as, let's say, people do in the UK, which was brought back in 40 years ago under the Thatcher government. That's just an example of how we are just generally not looking forward or forward-looking in terms of regulations on the island.
No, Nick Nacornew, please.
It's fairly evident that politicians are a caste. In fact, to be successful within the system, you need to be a professional. You have to specialise. You have to cut yourself off from that previous world that you may have been in, and you become the specialist of the parliamentary system. It's sad in some ways because you cut your links to work, which is what most people do, and to the wider community. But only if you confine yourself to the States Assembly, as some do. In fact, what you've got to be is the representative. You are taking the people's voice there. When I gave speeches in the States, I always remembered the people I'd spoken to. When I lifted up a packet of dry spaghetti, I remembered the young woman who said, well, that's all I get from the food bank, and that's what I have to feed my kids on. I remembered that, and of course that was really powerful. Walking around in this campaign, meeting new people, knocking on doors, I've discovered horrible sights about housing in Jersey, which has shocked me. I thought it had disappeared 40 years ago. It's back again. People living in basically a box, which is basically a bed with a shed round it. Horrible. The other question was about asbestosis. Yes, of course, all rights in Jersey are always the light version, like employment rights, all stripped away. And you've got something left which basically favours employers. It's 10 years to enforce a contract, but to bring unfair dismissal, much shorter period, 3 months. Thank you.
Kelly Langdon, please.
First of all, the lady at the front. Yes, I will give up my full-time job. I've already informed my HR department that if I am successful, then I will be giving in my notice. Also, part-time work as well. I am a small business owner, so I will obviously be giving that up as well. This is a full-time position. You need to give 110% into being a States member, and if you don't, then why are you going for the job? You wouldn't go into another full-time job and not give your all, so why would you do that with being a States member? With the asbestos, thank you so much for raising that. I would definitely support the implementation of a compensation scheme. Absolutely. I think any compensation scheme or any benefit towards the public of Jersey would benefit the public of Jersey. The only thing is that obviously it would need to be regulated. It would need to be obviously approved by the states, and obviously they would need to work with the states, being a statutory scheme. But what we need to focus on as well is prevention. So it's all well and good having a compensation scheme when the issues are brought up years later, but we need to focus on prevention, making sure that people don't have these issues in the future. And that's what the problem is in the States at the moment. It's all about quick fixes. It's all about, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? It's not looking at the current problems. And I think that's what needs to be focused on. Thank you.
Judy Martin, please.
Thank you. I'll start with the second question first. And it is in Jersey, we are always fighting against the government, which is the Council of Ministers to me, and compensation schemes that work well elsewhere and are proven, we don't do well. And it's always somebody else's problem. So we do need to do, we know what asbestos does and we know it kills. So, you know, that, and if it's now being phased out, but there's still people who are being affected with it. As somebody said earlier, it takes years, some people, and if it's in government buildings, it's the government's problem and they need to sort it out. Is this a full-time job? It's a weirdest job I've ever had, and I've done everything. I've worked in accounts, I've waited tables, I've cleaned houses, I've been a single mum, and I've done all this as well on this job. Just even, you've got the Jersey Police Authority, Scrutiny, PPC, PAC, Jersey Overseas Aid, all these committees need populating by the people who are not in the government and the assistant ministers who get a lot more help and support than any backbencher, even if you're on these panels. So it is a full-time job. It's a varied work, but it's interesting, and I still have an absolute great passion for it. And I really do get annoyed, and I don't think any of these candidates, but I've been on election hustings with others, and they think you only turn up every other Tuesday, and that's the job done. It's not like that. Thank you.
Scott Wickenden, please.
Thanks, John. I don't have any other work apart from a States member at the moment. It is a full-time job. It's more than a full-time job. It's late nights, it's early mornings, and it's very fulfilling in that way. As far as asbestos, anyone who's been adversely affected or their health has been affected negatively because of asbestos and they're ill, we've got to give them the most support. We've got to make sure that they're getting the right support from health. We've got to make sure that it's not happening anywhere else that it's being treated with. So of course it's about getting the right level of support, and I would support that too.
Okay. Jason Lagadou, please.
The subject of serving in the States, it is a public service. With that, I do have my own company, which I've been operating for 19 years. So I wouldn't actually be closing my company, but I would be hibernating it. Because with the whole concept of public service, you need to be there 24/7 to be able to support the community that you're standing for. Where the concept of work is concerned, there would be times that there is downtime, as any job has in the state service. So therefore, I would be able to carry out small jobs on the sidelines with my own business. So I wouldn't actually close my business, but I would give plenty of time and 100% time into the state's task. Now, asbestos. This is a very dangerous product. It's in everything. It's in all sorts of paint, it's in materials, it's in vinyl tiles, It's all over. It's been used for so many different things. For Artex, things have been done on ceilings and walls for over many years. The terminology asbestosis is actually a slang term. It's actually mesothelioma, is the disease that asbestos causes, which is a scabbing of the inside of the lungs, because the fibres are sharp fibres. They're like they're barbs which go into the lungs, and basically they stay there. They cause serious breathing and respiratory problems, and it is very, very bad death indeed, because it is a guaranteed death that you're going to die from it. Looking at the support that government as a statutory situation, yes, absolutely. The government has endorsed the use of asbestos over the years, many, many years, decades ago. So therefore, yes, undoubtedly, government should support it. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So I think we now move to the third batch of questions. I think on the last time there's a gentleman there with his hand up that I couldn't take last time. So we'll start with that gentleman's question.
Thank you. I've been living around here for 30 years now, and I think our depart front deserves being modernised. But if you turn over to that way, to La Colette, I've been very concerned, Judy Martin knows about this, the environment of the stuff dumped down there. One of you new gentlemen, I think, mentioned the smell. Some of it is potent if you're here long enough. It is vile. When they turned it the other week, we had the smell of strong bleach in our house. We live next door to this hotel. It's very well doing this, but if you turn around, look at the beach and go, oh, isn't this lovely, and breathe in some of those fumes, and isn't that asbestos still down there?
So your question is, please, sir?
And that's basically it. What they're going to do, I've been waiting 20, 30 years to get that sorted. After Parsonage Front, do it. What's going to be done down there for the safety?
Right, so that's the question is, what are you going to do to improve? Are you talking about La Colette or the general?
Well, they talk about asbestosis. There is lethal things. If you inhale too many green spores,
okay, so
it's as bad for you as asbestosis.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that question. So, emissions from that site, and no, somebody else. Sorry, I can't see the hands. Who had the hands up? No, I think you. I think that gentleman there's put a question before. I'd like to see somebody else first, please. Sorry? Oh, yes, a gentleman there. To the one side.
Just round the corner here.
Could you come in? Make it.
Hi, I'm Mr. Goslar. Some of the people on the at the front know what I'm going to raise already. Cut a long story short, I'm going to ask how many of the candidates will agree to ask a question if they get elected regarding actions of the Social Security Department which were unlawful. Just to give some background, in 2013, October, Minister of Social Security Francis de Graley brought a proposition to tighten up sanctions for not actively seeking work, and also introduce a sanction for leaving work without good cause. And it was stated quite clearly the penalties were 2 weeks for the first breach, 4 weeks for the second. The third one was the controversial one. They would close the claimant's account, and that includes the whole household, including any children. Close it, and Legrady said for 6 weeks. No conditions were mentioned. Excuse me, I want to finish. So it was an unconditional.
I would like a question,
penalty.
please, if you can give us a question, because I prefer if we don't do speeches, please. If we have a question and then we can put it to the candidates, please.
I want to say what's going on.
But we haven't, sorry, sir, please could you phrase it as a question?
I've said, right at the beginning, I said it's going to be which candidates will ask a question about this, but I have to tell them what it's about.
Well,
I'm trying to be as brief as I can. Basically,
well, can I come back to you in a moment when you could able to refresh?
I think this is a cover-up, and this is why.
Well, no, I just want to have a question that I can put to all the candidates, please.
Legrady misled the Assembly, saying it was a 6-week stoppage of benefit, and what he knew at the time, he didn't say, it was actually a conditional stoppage of benefit that could go on for much longer than 6 weeks.
So your question is about that scheme, is it?
To cut a long story short, 2 years later, I emailed Deputy Judy Martin to raise this. She says, I'll look into it and get back to you. She didn't. 3 years later.
Well, I think, sir, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take that question.
I'm sorry.
I can't, we're at a Hustings meeting.
Yeah,
if you can rephrase a question, I will put it. But I think what you're doing is
I'm sorry. Social Security's actions have been found to be unlawful in a November 2016 judgment of the Royal Court. But...
Pardon?
Sorry?
Look, sir, I think I'm going to rule that question out of order. If you can rephrase a question that's in order, I will take it. I think we cannot, we are short of time.
This
it's not fair to the candidates.
This is a cover-up. The states will not ask
please,
any questions about it.
Thank you. We'll come back to you if you can rephrase a question. Now, can I have another question, please?
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to pose a question to the candidates on whether you would look at corporation tax. It's clear to everyone that Jersey just doesn't have the money that it used to 15 years ago. And if you want to make these improvements, would you review that? Or at least tax deposits on over 50 million to be able to pay for these changes?
Okay. So we have two questions for two questions for candidates. One on half-day power and what's the La Colette. What are we going to do about the emissions, the unhealthy emissions, and also corporation tax? So I think we'll start with, I'll make sure I get my list right. Candidate number 6, I think this time, which is Kelly Langdon.
Well, first off, I'll start with La Colette. Obviously, the way that the states are burning our waste and the way that the states are dealing with our waste is unacceptable, especially when it comes to certain things like, I'm going to go on to renewable energy. I believe that what we need to do is we need to look after our environment. Like I said, I'm a member of Jersey in Transition. The way that the environment is being treated in Jersey is unacceptable. It's not fair that as residents in Havre you're having to deal with the La Colette wastage and the smells. I mean, I used to live up in Queen's Road, and when the burner was up there, we used to smell it all the time. So Reform Jersey, we actually pledged to work with the Jersey Electricity Company to produce ambitious targets for renewable energy generation. So that is one thing that we pledge. It's one of our top 10 key pledges to you. What we'll do is we will actually examine the benefits of wind farms in France, so don't worry, we will not be using them here. But we'll look at the local generation of solar power and even further into new fields such as things like biomass. I was speaking to one of the lovely guys who created the Jersey Hemp Farm, and he was talking about biomass, and it's a really, really interesting field of energy generation. In relation to corporation tax, Reform Jersey has a specific pledge for corporation tax. The 0% tax rate must remain for the investment businesses in Jersey, which they actually depend on tax neutrality to remain practical. However, it is wrong that so many businesses trading in Jersey don't pay tax. What we do not believe in is stealth taxes. So things like the waste disposal charges. They're not a sensible alternative. Those need to be looked at. Corporation tax needs to be reviewed, and it's not fair that so many companies in Jersey are paying 0%. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Martin, please.
Thank you. Yes, I remember that gentleman very well, and we've worked together. Yeah, of course. I didn't know. You didn't say your name, so I didn't know if you wanted me to. Anyway, yes, getting other people to listen, to even understand that there's been an issue. Some people were very, very ill and still are getting ill. And again, it goes back to, you know, trying to convince people and taking people with you, because they don't hear it. They don't want to hear it. We were here when we were only going to have the energy from waste plant in La Colette, and then everything has gone down there. So it's not fair, but you know, this is, you turn around and that's where they say, you know, every year something more has come down to this district, and there is no easy answer to it, because you know, we have been fighting it for nearly, well, since I've been there, 15 years at least. The corporation tax, so we keep being told there's review after review, and you know the zero has to be there because otherwise we could lose. You know, it's the golden goose, isn't it? So you mustn't lose it. But there are other ways. They are looking at it now with a lot of prompting from, say, Deputy Mike Higgins. You know, who's really into these things, and he knows that there is movement. So people, we can get a little bit more. We've gone now for the retail tax. That will bring in money, but I know the retail tax at 20%, and I fought. We started at 10 because it will affect the people on the lowest earnings. It will put their food up. The retailers actually told us their shareholders are not going to be affected. It's the poor that are going to be affected. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wickenden.
Thanks, John. The smells and what's happened down the Colette, we've been done over by the country parishes in a lot of ways because you can't have green waste in the country rotting. It has to be in town. We've been outvoted for those kind of things, and it'd be hard to get it to be moved back with the underrepresentation we have. I wish we could do more. I'd like to see a DFI minister that's actually a St Helier representative rather than somebody from the country parishes, because maybe we'll see a little bit more help in our own area. And that's not me putting my name forward for that one. But there are other good deputies that could. The corporation tax, I think, it's time to change that model now. It served us at the time, but there's no need for it anymore. We need to be looking at it. I know the tax department are doing a full review on all sorts of taxation to see how it changes. I too, like Deputy Martin, I signed for the repeal of the retail tax, and again that's going to be putting an extra £100 onto the lowest households, and I was quite surprised by some members that voted not to reduce it. Certainly ones that talk about helping the lowest in society. The corporate tax has got to change again. It doesn't serve our purpose anymore. Thanks.
Jason Legadoo, please.
Thank you. Well, looking at the Colette, the safety issues down there, there's a lot of danger down there. I'm an ex-fireman, amongst other things, and some of the training that we've done to do with the gasworks in the gas place area, I identified 25 years ago that there's a problem in so much as the gasometer. I identified at that time that basically we needed to look at the whole gasometer being removed, because if there was an evacuation there, then it would be a massive task. We look at a few years ago, exactly that happened there, and no, I didn't start it. Looking at what's down at Colette, we have the whole fuel farm down there, and the prime gas, the gasometer in gas place was just diluted. The prime gas is actually undiluted. That's pure gas down there. That is a very dangerous item, and the whole of town is in danger for it. It should be moved with the the whole fuel farm. There's a discussion about sending it 500 metres south. Waste of time, complete waste of time and money. Whereas sending it 5 miles north and building a reclamation site at Ronay, yes, they do use explosives for the rock face. However, it's controlled explosions, and the whole area, if you had to evacuate a radius of half a mile, there's maybe 100 people that would have to be shifted, whereas you do a half mile from down here, it's a massive area indeed. So there is safety issues that need to be looked at and addressed properly. Now, the corporation tax, I'm a director of a zero rated company, and since 2009 we've had this 010. I think we should have taxes back on companies, whereby if you have a company, you're an entity, you should pay for being here. Thank you.
Russell Levy, please.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Jason just there on his last point about the corporation tax, and there is an actuarial evaluation happening now on social security and on the tax system, and both of those are supposed to be due towards the end of this year. So this is supposed to be thorough, and we should wait and see before doing anything too drastic what this actuarial valuation comes up with. But so we can, but I think we need to look at our tax system being fairer and try to iron out all the inequities in it. Should pensioners be paying tax on their state pension? Maybe on their private pension, but on their state pension, haven't they already paid the tax? Well, weren't we supposed to not be doing double taxation, for example? And that seems to be a classic example of it. Plus the fact that, of course, their threshold, you know, a working couple's threshold before they start paying taxes to 29,800, and I think, and a pensioner couple, their threshold is 26,100. So there's imbalances there. There's lots of others, and we need to iron all that out. It's all gone quiet in the Havre Park group on the smell at La Collette, sir. But if this is green waste smell, if this is smell from green waste, there is absolutely no reason why in 2018 green waste, composting, what have you, should smell. We need to have a look at it.
John McNichol.
Yes, the environment. Jersey's not doing very well in stewarding its environment. So far this year we've had 2 reservoirs closed down through poisoning in the water. One from weed killer and the other one from high levels of nitrate. It's totally unacceptable. Add to that the sea lettuce problem. We've got issues with soil erosion, collapse of biodiversity. We really need to get a handle on looking after our environment and stewarding it properly. And we're not doing it. We've got other issues coming out, plastic pollution. There's all kinds of issues coming out, and we need a joined up way of thinking of how we're going to deal with looking after our island properly. As for the corporation tax, well, 010 has been disastrous, as anyone will tell you. The burden of tax has been passed on to wages and salaries, so the corporates are not, paying their way. We have a flagship tax policy that we're going to use to draw in some revenue that's going to be used for higher education funding, but we can't continue with the low tax, low spend model. We're an aging population that is living longer, and we need to pay for that fact. So we need to find a way of accessing revenues fairly and progressively. We've got ideas, but the retail tax is a step in the right direction. But yeah, we need to find a way to somehow tax corporates again and get them contributing to our island.
Yen Mash, please.
For the first question, this is basically what happens when you have unfair electoral system. So you get country parishes which outvote the southern parishes and dump, let's say, things that that smell in urban areas. So at the end of the day, we all in St Helier suffer from that, whether that's at First Tower with the waste disposal, or whether that's down here with other kinds of disposal. As for corporation tax, 010 has to stay. It's as simple as that. As we see a transition from from banks over to trust funds, it's more than vital than ever before that we have 0% corporation tax. How 010 came about is we used to have a system where corporation tax. Oh, Jesus. I've lost my trail of thought.
You've got time.
I've got time. basically companies were able to operate here but weren't local were taxed at 0%. The EU said that was unacceptable, so we introduced 0.10. The problem with the inception of 0.10 is how it changed our fiscal policy. Basically what it done is rebalanced corporation taxes that we get from companies and taxes that we get from personal, and basically shifted the ratio of that. So now currently the income tax split is 400 million from personal and 880 million from company taxes. What the government should have done is it should have looked at retailing tax before they looked at GST or long-term care tax.
Nick Cornu.
The low tax, low spend model is most definitely broken. 0, 10, 20 was a mechanism to keep the finance industry alive. It depends upon that 0 for companies. What we've got to try and do is get companies paying tax once again, and maybe get a little bit more of that 10 up from companies that actually are in the finance industry. What's happening is a polarization in Jersey between the haves and the have-nots, and it's the haves in finance and the poverty of the poor in places like St Helier and Havre, where the government is completely forgetting them because they don't have the resources to put into supporting them. Mental health, welfare, looking after the elderly, these are all things that are going to get worse. And we need to address that with a different form of policy and a different form of government and different individuals who are going to fight for those policies. St Helier is the ghetto, or sometimes referred to as, because the rich live in the northern parishes and they put all the rubbish, literally, in St Helier. All that urban infrastructure that's essential for a modern existence is all there. And yes, there are lots of dangers there, and I'm concerned about them. When I go swimming in Havre in the pool, I wonder what I'm actually breathing or drinking sometimes. And I will answer Mr. Gosselin's question. Social security is so complex, it affects only those who are actually on it, and they don't know how it works. These are some of the most poor and vulnerable people. There is no legal aid available for explaining the situation. That those who are claiming are dependent upon individuals who are prepared to provide their advice. People like Jeff Sudden, who's very knowledgeable. And when he goes into Social Security, the alarm bells go, because they know he's someone who's going to fight for working people. Yes, there's lots of things that are very unlawful in the way that Social Security operates, and I go to a lot of tribunals.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Right, I think we've time for a fourth set of questions, so if we could have new questioners, please, who haven't answered before. I think I've got two. Any more hands just to see? Or two ladies there in the middle, I think. Lady on the left here and a lady on the right, just opposite her. And the lady in the blue is the second one. And then the lady on the left with her hair up, don't mind me saying so.
I just wanted to know, as a young skilled worker, I'm actually looking to leave the island because I can't afford to get on the housing ladder. I can't afford to live here. I've been on this island my entire life, and it's my home, and I love it. And I'm a teacher. I've got what most people would consider a decent salary, but on a decent salary in Jersey, you can't live. I can't afford. I'm still living at home, and I'm nearly 30, because I can't by myself afford a deposit, or I can't afford the high rent. I have to maybe move in with somebody else. The quality and range of housing available is poor.
And your question,
My
please?
question is that what would you as candidates look to do to keep young skilled workers who are the future of this island on this island, benefiting this island rather than us leaving?
Thank you.
Yes, madam.
Hello, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of all the pensioners like myself under 65. 2 years ago, I was getting Christmas bonus, and then social had stopped it, and they changed the rules from 65 and over. If you're on income support, which I'm not, I pay full whack rent, and I think it's so unfair. Why they change the rules? They should stick to how it was before.
This is the Christmas bonus, is it?
Yes.
Just
yes.
So pensioners' Christmas bonus and the means testing.
Yeah.
Is that it?
They should carry on as it was before. That everyone who is pensionable age, like myself, I'm 64 next month. I'll be 65 next year. I work hard for 44
well,
years.
Thank you, madam. We've got your question. So we have a question of young skilled workers, retaining them in the island, including housing and treatment of pensioners for the Christmas bonus particularly. So I think I better look at my list. We start with candidate number 3, which is John McNichol, please.
Well, thanks for the question. It's very pertinent. We must address the scourge of low pay, insecure work and crippling housing costs. It's creating a massive inequality within the island. Jersey now has the highest levels of inequality, higher than the UK, higher than Guernsey, higher than the EU. There's a recent report came out, the income distribution report, and some of the statistics it threw up are absolutely horrendous. We've got a third of pensioners, a third of children, and over half of single parents now living in poverty in Jersey. And that's completely unacceptable. The spending power of the poorest tenth of our community has declined by a whopping 36%. And inequality has a very corrosive effect on communities. It's not just not having enough money and not having poor housing. It affects every part of your life, and it has a terrible effect on mental health, and the social ills that brings. So you see things like addiction, alcoholism, domestic violence, family breakdown, a downward spiral of despair. So it has to be addressed. And the way that you do that is you look at it in the round. You look at it in a much more holistic way. So you address taxation and put money in people's pockets. You address poor pay. You raise the minimum wage so that people aren't, caught in that spiral of depending on taxpayer handouts. You address the rents, social rents. Social rents are going to be capped by Reform Jersey. And then we're going to go away and we're going to come up with we're going to do a piece of work. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we have Jan Mash, please.
As for the second question, even though although I do support 0-10, I don't know why pensioners should be punished for the incompetent implementation of it, which basically left this island broke, which meant that Social Security didn't have the money, so therefore all these, let's say, TV licenses, etc., were cut. I couldn't agree with you more. They shouldn't have been cut, and it was my party, or the party that I'm representing, that managed to at least get the means test, because originally they just wanted to scrap everything altogether. As a party, we will be looking to review Social Security altogether. As for housing, I'm in the same boat as you, and so is everyone that I know. Housing on this island is absolutely ridiculous, and it's why students don't come back to the island, simply. Because why, you can go to the UK and, have a lower wage, have higher taxes, and yet you still have more opportunities to either get on the housing ladder, pay for a start your private pension. You can't do that here. It's just an absolute dream to do that here. So we will be looking at capping social rents, which we we'll have a what's it called? An empty property tax to get empty properties onto the market, and we'll be looking to cap social rents. In doing so, because currently social rents are going up by inflation, which is at 3.6%, plus a 0.75% on top of that until the 90% of market rate is met. That is meaning that the private sector can push up their rates even more, which is currently at 4.5%. So the entire system is just currently unaffordable.
Nick Lacornu.
The young. Well, there's a sociological change going on in Britain. We used to have a home-owning democracy. Well, that was the myth, and it doesn't exist anymore. And for the youth, for the young, they will never own property. And that's the situation, because property is held by an older generation, and the banks and the whole system is set up to maintain property prices. And all the lending, everything, it's all turning round for them to keep their wealth protected. And as a consequence, this is the source of rebellion in United Kingdom. It's the youth that's joining things like Momentum in the Labour Party that wants change, because they know they're stuck at the bottom in those horrible, precarious jobs and will always be paying rent and will never own unless mum and dad happen to be wealthy or can lend them a lot of money. That's probably what's happening in Jersey. And it's for that group to make demands, to engage in politics and to fight for change, to elect people like me who are going to fight to change that. As for pensioner poverty, well, it's very real, and I see it as I go round knocking on the doors and canvassing, and it's got worse. There's no question of that since the last time I did it. Yeah, there should be a Christmas bonus. It's just that the guys who run this show are damn mean. They will not do it because they want to save money. And because you often don't vote, they're protected. They want to keep you in ignorance. They've got a little saying, the fewer the better. The fewer who vote, the better. And that keeps them in power. They are never challenged. 70% voter abstentions. Got to change.
Kelly Langdon.
I'm going to answer the second question first. Obviously, pensioner poverty is a real issue in Jersey. Within the last 10 years, we've seen the real-time value of your pensions go down with the increase of GST and also the removal of your Christmas bonuses. The states have not been supportive of you, and they haven't thought about you in all of their decisions, and that needs to change. We need to have people who think about everyone when they make their decisions, not just the select few. So that definitely needs to change. And in order to do that, you need to vote in the people who promise to do that, who promise to sing from the same song sheet, like myself and my Reform candidates. We promise that we will put everybody first. We won't just think of the select few. In relation to young people, it breaks my heart. As someone who has done it myself, I've tried to go to university. I didn't get funding because I was in full-time employment. I tried to save for a deposit, but I can't because with the way that life is going in Jersey, it's impossible. I understand the excitement of going to the UK because there isn't enough of an industry diversity here in Jersey. You either go into finance and you're able to afford a house in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, God knows how many years' time, or you follow your passion and you end up in poverty. It's one or the other. And what needs to happen in Jersey is we need to support new industries, we need to introduce rent caps, we need to research a fair regulation system for all sectors in housing, we need to support our young people with on-island training as well, so not losing great minds to the UK, so supporting on-island mental health nursing schemes. So if you wanted to train to be a mental health nurse over here, and also supporting more schemes as well. So if you wanted to follow your passion, you can do that over here and stay in the island. And that's what I promised to do. Thank you.
Judy Martin.
Yes, thank you. To the young lady there first, it's really sad to hear you say that you're a qualified teacher and your only option is to leave the island, and at the moment you're still living at home with your parents, which is people are living staying longer with their parents. and hopefully they are saving towards the deposit, but obviously not in your case. But that's what we did. I mean, in the middle of last term, we had a fantastic deposit scheme which gave you a one-off payment. It only worked. It was only a few million put in it. It was oversubscribed, but every family, and I know some of these youngsters, and my elder son's friends, they were able, because they were renting, they couldn't save that deposit. They will pay it back over the next 25 years at a very minimal interest. And schemes like that, look at the 30 million we give away in rent rebate. Why, you know, one-off payment, get them on the ladder, get your step on the ladder, and people will stay. Owning your own home is so important, and the rents are ridiculous. I mean, we don't have any social housing rents, 90%. Andium said they had a 5.9 million operating surplus. Now, to me, that's profit. That's coming out of people's pockets, and it's also coming out of Social Security, who are giving it to housing. Mad system. On the pensioners, the Christmas bonus. Yes, after the last elections, Social Security said we've got to wipe out £10 million. They picked on the most vulnerable, they picked on the pensioners, they picked on the single parents, they were taking away the whole TV licences until I took that proposition and kept it, as I say, by one vote. And then a year later, when the BBC were giving them away free, they didn't even fight for you. And we had the argument, they've kept it means tested, where if you went to the BBC in the UK, everybody gets a TV licence. Your government, your council and ministers didn't do that. Thank you.
Scott Wickenden, please.
Some very good questions, and well said. As far as housing, it's a massive problem for many of the younger generations. I think we need to be doing many different changes to try and make this happen. Stamp duty, I think we need to look at stopping stamp duty for a much higher threshold for first-time buyers. I think we need to put a ban on percentage-based fees. Whenever you buy or sell a house, you end up getting a percentage of the value of the property rather than a fee on what it actually takes to do the work. That should be stopped. We keep hearing from the housing minister it's about demand, like supply and demand. We should build more houses and that will sort out the prices. Well, that's rubbish. If we've got investment portfolios from London, so every 60 houses we build, they buy 20 of them as an investment portfolio. Investment portfolios should be on the register of beneficial ownerships, and we should have a cap on people and how many houses they're allowed to own, either through multiple investment portfolios or in their own portfolio. That would help alleviate some of the problems about supply and demand. The state's deposit scheme, it was a fantastic system, and let's carry on doing that. We get the money back and it works. People that own their own houses buy carpets and furniture, and they buy into the economy, and we will get that money back. As far as the under 65 pensioners Christmas bonus, it was changed from a mean tested system because there was far too many people that didn't need the money whatsoever that got it. But absolutely, my dear. And the thresholds must be completely wrong. It's not right that it has to be looking at just people on income support. It should be looking at proper thresholds, and that needs to be reviewed.
Thank you. Jason Lagadoo, please.
Thank you. This is quite an interesting couple of questions. We've got both ends of the spectrum here. We've got the young and the old being brought at the same time. I'm going to start with the old side. No disrespect for the age. Looking at pensions, I've actually made comments in my opening speech about pensions. The whole concept with income support and things like that, where you've got pensioners, all of us are contributing through our lives, and therefore we've paid for this. Obviously I'm not there yet. Hopefully I might get there. But once you get to that pension age, there shouldn't be a situation of saying, oh, well, it's a case of you can still afford it, so you don't need it. No, you've paid your insurance policy. You should get it back. No questions about it. The value you're getting on a pension is just diabolical. It should not be what it is. It should be better. You should be having at least what is being classed as the either the minimum wage or the living wage in those sort of categories. It's being argued for workers, so why not for pensioners? Looking at Christmas bonuses, it's Christmas. Of course you should have a bonus. What's wrong with that? is not that expensive to the state, and considering the amount of finance we have in the island, there's plenty of money for that. Looking at the young side of things, we're looking at, you look at immigration and population. That is causing a problem for the amount of properties we have over here that is actually affordable for young people. I know I've not been able to afford my own property. I've only actually got my own property in the last, just over a year ago, because sadly I lost my mother. And I've only been able to get a property myself through inheritance, which I'm looking at the young, and I've been in the same situation, seriously in debt. I think we should be looking at more of managing our immigration and population to allow people to stay in this island and afford proper accommodation. Thank you.
Russell Labby.
Yes, it's terrible that young skilled professionals are wanting to leave the island because they can't do what they want to do, which is set up a home. And I feel for you, and I just don't understand why our planning department don't actually do any planning and identify sites which could be used for housing. What's just happened in St Peter's is a tragedy, and it's really sad that people's expectations were raised in that way. And you know, there are fields in St Peter's. You know, there's different grades of fields. Right? If we're going to have to build on some green fields, let them be the worst ones. I mean, there are fields in St Peter's with very little topsoil around the airport. You could build a whole village on some of that stuff, by the rugby club actually. So, and I also feel that the Common Investment Fund last year produced £200 million. There should be a way of young people in the private sector or public sector being able to. There's a savings deposit scheme which could be pooled with the Common Investment Fund with those fantastic returns, and we should be able to buy into that. I've never understood the whole 90% malarkey on social housing rent. I mean, the people in social housing should be paying the rent that covers the maintenance and the operating costs, and that's it. Not bonuses to executives of Andium Homes, you know, who, you know, one of them got a £40,000 pay rise just after the La Collette thing went through, and another one got £30,000. It doesn't sit comfortably with me. I don't. And I'm sad that you've lost your bonus. It's typical of a thing that's not targeted. What I think is also troubling for pensioners is a high cost of living. We don't have an Aldi, we don't have a Lidl. Is that keeping prices artificially high? Gas prices need a complete investigation because they are too high. And also, we need to help people exchange their gas boiler for something more efficient with the money that's around somewhere for gas energy efficiency.
Well, thank you. I think because candidates are speaking to time, I think we've got time for the final two questions. So please, if you haven't put a question before, I want to make sure I share it out. I think there's people at the back. Is there any questions there? Because I've taken them. Hands up. Is there any questions out?
Are you sure we've got time with that 1 minute closing?
I think we should.
We've got 1 minute.
No, I think we can do it. I think we can do it. One question.
One question.
I think on the candidate's request, they want me to cut it down to one. I shall cut it down to one. A gentleman, you've spoken before. Is there another one with a hand up? In that case, you'll take your question, sir.
Thank you. With a range of pledges being made to improve conditions across the board for low, middle income earners, have you adequately costed how these will be funded? If you plan to increase taxation for elements of the island community, have you considered the risk that if they leave the island, they won't be paying any tax? 10% of something gives us something. 20% of nothing gives us nothing.
So your question is, sir?
Have they costed how the various improvements to services will be funded?
Thank you. Okay, well, unless anybody disagrees, I think we're going to stick to the 2 minutes still. If I hear... No, in that case, we'll stick to the 2 minutes for the one question. If you can... Okay, so candidate... I think we start with candidate number 7. That's Judy Martin.
Thank you. Yes, it's very interesting reading different people's pledges and even reading my own. I mean, I've costed what I would do at housing. What I haven't costed it. I want to know more about the money we keep giving out. And it used to be back to the States, but now Andy M Homes might as well be any other housing trust as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, obviously I do know that there are people really suffering out there, and it is either this end of the scale where you are probably just starting work or just starting a family and you're working and you're struggling, you really are struggling, and then there's the other end where you're trying to live on a fixed income, your pension, and that might be the States plus a little tiny other bit that you've put into. So but it was, as I say, when everything we have to do has to have money coming in, I'd be interested to see how things are funded. I mean, I supported and I was grateful for the scrutiny report on the higher education funding, because it's a fantastic scheme and it's much more inclusive than they had, but they've only got the money for 2 years. And so, you know, was it a passing shot for the outgoing Treasury Minister to keep some of his friends in the government at the election time? But it's something we've all been fighting for, so it's not something you could vote against. As I say, that is costed, but only for 2 years. And if re-elected, these are the sort of things, you know, we must fund. We must look at these and, again, help the young and also the old. Thank you.
Scott Wickenden.
I would say a lot of the work that I've been trying to do already has been about trying to make savings and efficiencies. That's by digitising services. We've seen some great work with the police and the Smart Police programme, which is making things a lot more efficient. So police officers don't have to go back to the precinct to do paperwork. They can do it all from mobile devices when they're out and about, and that's making massive savings in their operational costs. Now, we all know that in the future there's going to be an ageing population. We're going to have more people on pensions than we have working, which is going to mean it's harder. Social Security are doing a review right now to look at what it means. And I'm pretty sure what it will mean is that the ceiling on the Social Security contributions is going to have to go up to cover the cost for the future. I think even the contributions might have to go back, and that will help support what will be people living longer in this island. I think it would be dangerous to spend that money too early on something right now. Let's make sure we finish that Social Security review. There's over 200 people working in Social Security, and I don't think any of them go into work saying, how can I make people's lives harder? How can I make things worse for the people that are of the island? They are generally there trying to make sure that we do things in a balanced way. But let's not try and get ourselves into a structural deficit within our Social Security fund, because if we do, then people will be working until they're 85 and they'll be paying much higher contributions. Let's wait for the review and understand how to make those changes.
Jason Lagadoo.
Thank you. This is sort of quite an interesting area where how are we going to pay for things? Well, the whole of government is meant to be a ginormous community, not-for-profit organisation. Not quite like a charity, it's not a charity. But the situation, we have to pay for our infrastructure, we have to pay for our services, our essential services, police, fire, ambulance, hospitals and everything. Looking at the whole concept of bringing monies in where income tax is concerned, both on corporation tax and personal tax, then we should all be paying something. Now, one of the areas to look at is Social Security tax versus income tax. If we earn it, we should pay a percentage of it. If we're not earning it, how can we pay a percentage? So looking at, if you're not working, you've still got to pay Social Security, which is ludicrous, because you haven't got the money to pay for it. Whereas having a threshold of income tax is, if that was to be brought down to 0, yet you don't actually have Social Security payments, then as you earn your income, you then pay into the system. When you need support from the system, that's when you'd have the support coming back from the system for Social Security. Looking at what I've said about the 0-10 issue, then as I say, as a company director myself, I'm in a small enterprise, so I'm not a worldwide Fortune 500. The scenario there is you look at a Jersey individual company, then we're having to pay on shareholders, whereas a non-Jersey wasn't. This has been raised earlier. This was changed in the law. But when you look at the whole concept of saying, well, hang on, how can my company have a tax identity yet not get charged tax or on its profits? You look at the United States, Donald Trump is trying to change his corporate tax from 39.1% down to 20%. That's going to be competition for us.
Thank you.
We need to look at something
different.
Thank you.
Chase. Russell Labby, please.
I don't think, Richard, I've made tax and spend claims in my manifesto. It's not really about that for me. It's about ideas and imagination. I've just mentioned that I think 500,000 is too little for the Havre Park improvements, and that should go up to $1 million. I am campaigning for a new skateboard park for the skateboarders as soon as possible. And I think it's outrageous that Fort Regent is being left in the state that it is, and something's got to be sorted out because it's going to be more expensive. So there is money sloshing around, actually. There's the treasurer, outgoing treasurer's stashed away £32 million in a biscuit tin somewhere from revenues of last year. There's £7 or £11 million apparently coming down the line from the first building on the Esplanade Quarter. I would sell off 25% shares of JT, which is valued at 200 million, so you'd get 50 million. So I'd do initiatives like that and ring fence some of that money for the kind of projects I've just been talking about, Fort Regent, which Fort Regent needs to be managed public-private, because governments aren't very good, especially ours, in running things like leisure centres, etc. So I think we need to get some pros in, proper conference facilities. Casino is nothing to be frightened of, ladies and gentlemen. They're really quite kind, nice places to be in. I've been to lots and I've never betted once, but they happen to open late in drinking hours, and when you're on tour with a theatre, they're useful places to go to. But, they can be very attractive for tourists, and also could help solve late night drinking in St Helier and the outpouring. So I hope that's touched on some of the issues you're concerned about. Thank you.
John McNichol.
Yeah, well, the question was, has our tax policies been costed and checked over? Yeah, they have. They've been costed by us and checked by the tax department. So what we're proposing to do is to simplify the income tax model and to move to a single calculation, reducing the marginal rate by 1%. So 95% of islanders will benefit from that. They will either receive a tax freeze or a tax reduction. Only the wealthiest, 5%, will be asked to pay slightly more, up to 25%. Still a fantastic tax rate. You're not going to get that anywhere else in Europe. So it's not going to push people away, and for a very, very modest reform, it's going to bring a substantial reward with it. And the money that it does raise has been costed out at £6 million, and we're going to invest that money in making sure that our students on the island receive free tuition fees. And that still won't use up all the money. That's been costed out at £4 million or 4.5. I can't remember which one it was. But the money that's left over from that will be ploughed back into our public services. So it's a win-win situation. And we have to be looking at, our tax system's not fit for purpose. It's not serving the community as it should be. And we simply have to find ways. We can't keep pushing the burden onto the lower paid and to Middle Jersey. It's simply immoral. So we have to find a way of accessing revenue in a fair and in a progressive way. And I think we've managed that with our tax policy.
Jan Mash, please.
Every member of the states is entitled to get their propositions checked by the Treasury. Our tax plan actually comes from a plan that was already put to the states but was rejected. What it simply does is takes is put everyone onto the marginal rate, which currently the top tax rate for that is 26%. It reduces that by 1%, so the majority of income earners will get up to a 1% cut, and it abolishes 20 means 20, so the highest earners, so people on £100,000, £150,000, £250,000 will start paying 25%, like people who are on the median wage at £30,000, rather than the 20% that they currently do. That raises, as John said, £6.6 million. 4.5 of that is going to go towards higher education funding. I don't believe by upping taxes that anyone's going to up their roots. At the end of the day, you're not going to, take your kid out of school, sell your home, and go move to the UK and pay 45% tax when you're currently paying a top rate of 25% tax here. So yes, everything in this 33-page long document has been costed by at least one department of the states. Whether that be Statistics Jersey, whether that be Social Security, or whether that be the Tax Department.
Nicola Cornu.
Richard, I didn't realise you mixed in the milieu of Russian oligarchs and friends of Vladimir Putin, who would no doubt say, it's quite impossible, you can't possibly tax the rich, we will go away. No, they're not going to go away. The issue with Jersey is that it's a finance centre, and finance has captured the island economically and politically. Everything is run in its interest. The dominance of finance in the island is a problem. Everything is structured around it. What we need to do is somehow start taxing corporations once again, because the burden of taxation is falling on working people, on those who have lived by their salaries and their wages. Capital is not paying. And we are now paying to keep finance here effectively. Although they say it's so wonderful. There's no money, of course. Of course there's no money. It's rubbish. There's billions flushing around daily basis. We just have to be able to take a little bit of it more, so that working people actually live better. But the condition of working people, particularly those pensioners who are stuck on fixed incomes, has deteriorated substantially. As I said, as I go round knocking on doors, canvassing, I see it. Their conditions have got worse. If you understand the 70% who don't vote, it's because there is despair in the working class of their situation. They cannot see any way of getting out of it. They hate politicians, they hate the political class, they want change, but they don't know how to achieve it. One of the means of achieving it in this system is to vote. It's to make demands. Demand change.
And Kelly Langdon, please.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for your question. I think my two Reform Jersey colleagues have clearly stated where our money will be coming from. But one thing that I want to mention is that one of our pledges is to reform our social security contribution system to ensure that all islanders pay their fair share based on their income. So what we will do is we will actually raise the cap on contributions, which limits the percentage paid by high earners, so that they will pay an equal rate to low and middle earners. It's unfair that low and middle earners are paying social security contributions and high earners aren't. Where is the sense in that? We have pledged to reform that. We have pledged to review that. What we need to look at now is how to save money. Simple things like the hospital. £26 million and nothing to show for it. That is unacceptable. What's happened? That's £26 million of taxpayers' money, which has gone on nothing. It's got nothing to show for it. We need to look at saving money. We also pledged to do free GP visits. Simple things like that, not increasing GST. We don't need to worry about people leaving the island because, like my Reform Jersey colleague said, they're not going to leave to go pay higher taxes when their taxes are even already low here, even with a slight increase. It doesn't make sense. So what we need to look at is we need to focus on the lower middle earners. That's one thing that the Reform Jersey pledges are focused on. And please, if there's one thing I can leave you guys with today, is read our 33-page manifesto. Read our pledges. They are promises to you, and we promise to follow them all. So please, read the manifesto and read our pledges. Thank you so much.
I think that completes our discussion, the candidates' answers on the questions. I think now we're going to move to the final opening statements closing statement, to get it right. Closing statements, and we're going to start do that in the same order that we... 1 minute. 1 minute. So 1 minute closing statements in the order that we did the opening speeches. So candidate number 1, Jason Lagadou, would you please commence your opening speech? Sorry, your closing speech. I'll get it right in a minute. It's sorry about this.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to know that we've just done the preview for what we're going to go for the rest of the night. It should be a bit of fun. Hopefully everybody's brought their pillows with them. Looking at the discussions we're having here tonight, it's a case there's a lot of information floating around, which is very good for us all. Looking at all of us standing here, we're all standing to represent each other, and regardless of what happens, we're all looking for a better district, a better parish, a better island, and we need to all work together and be together and support one another for what we go to the future with. There's a lot to be said about teamwork, and when we look at going into any kind of job, and this is a job with a difference, being politics, we need to be able to associate with other parties, other people as well.
Thank you.
So I'd say thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. If you can, thank you. Russell Labby.
Well, this has been the last 3.5 years the most interesting and the most rewarding job I've ever done, and I've had lots of different ones. And I thank you for your confidence last time. Obviously, I'm asking for it again. And I think we should aim high in Havre, and I think my team are well placed to influence things. And if the government aren't going to do what we want them to do, we should be the government. I've heard, wouldn't Judy Martin make a great social security minister? Scott Wickenden for the last 3.5 years has been the only politician who understands digital. He has got a big brain. I've got a big mouth, but there might be something for me, I don't know. But what I can tell you is we will continue to fight for you and we'll never forget you. Thank you.
John McNichol, please.
Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our golden opportunity to take back control of our economy and get it working in favour of our community and our interests. We have a 10-point plan that is fully costed and fully deliverable. But to implement that plan, we need your mandate. It's our promise to you. Things can change, and they will change if we get out there and we vote for them. So please vote Reform Jersey on May the 16th. Thank you.
Yanni Mash.
My party is diverse, as you can probably tell by tonight that I'm not the natural auditor of the party. I'm the geek with the spreadsheets. This is the most important election in Jersey for generations. For the first time, you have a real choice at selection. You can either vote for continuity or you can vote for change. A vote for Reform Jersey, my party represents change. A vote for Reform Jersey is a vote to ensure that all islanders have a good standard of living. It's a vote to raise the minimum wage. It's a vote to freeze social rents and for an empty property tax. It's a vote to reduce GP costs. It's a a vote to ensure that everyone has access to quality education despite their background. Is that the closing bell? I want to be in the States because I want to be a part of a team that has proven that it's proactive in taking our government to task. Vote for the team on May the 16th.
Nick Lecornu.
In these closing moments, I'd like to remember the forgotten, the communities that are part of, no one has mentioned, the Portuguese, the Romanians, the Polish, the Latvians, the Russians. I'm very frightened that Brexit is going to have an impact on them. I'm very frightened that the policies which are going to be introduced for work permits are going to be designed to restrict them, and it's going to be a very authoritarian kind of regime that is going to be implemented. It's not good for business, we know that. There has to be the ability to bring in skilled workers. What's at loose, what's at work is a dangerous chauvinism, a reactionary chauvinism that is a threat and danger to working people. We should not be divided. If you vote for me, you'll be voting for someone who is prepared to fight for your interests, your social and economic interests.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Kelly Langdon.
Over the course of this evening, we have spoken about corporation tax, social security, housing costs, and all of these surround one thing, you. You are the reason that I am here tonight, but I need you. I need you to believe in me, believe in my promises to you. I will do everything I can to make life better for you. May the 16th is election day. On that day, you will stand there in the voting station and decide. When you make that decision, ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the shops than it was 4 years ago? Is Jersey as respected as it was? If you answer no to any of these questions, if you don't think that the course we've been on for the past 4 years is the course you want to see for the next 4 years, please vote for me, Kelly Langdon, and all of the Reform Jersey candidates you see here. And remember, there is nothing wrong with change if it is in the right direction. Thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Judy Martin, please.
Thank you, and it has been a very interesting night for some really different questions, and the housing issue is, and knocking the doors, the housing issue for the young and the skilled and even the people needing to rent is getting worse. As for me, you have given me your vote for the last 6 elections, and this will be my 7th. It's entirely up to you. My track record is there. I promise you that I will do exactly the same. I will fight, and I've been fighting for 18 years in the States and 5 years previous to that. I didn't go in the States or even try before that because I had 2 very young children, and they were still quite young when I actually went in. But so that's all I can say, really. I hope you can support me on the 16th of May, and I am working with the other 2 deputies who I've worked very well with for the last 3 years, Deputy Wickenden and Labby, and I make no apologies for that. I've never done this before. Never had the support from other deputies I've got from these 2. Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott Wickenden, please.
Firstly, thank you all for turning up tonight, and thank you for your questions. It's been really good to have them all, and I hope you get an idea of what we all stand for and what we're looking to do in the future. There's a lot of experience going in this election. This is a very important election as it goes. There's a lot of experience and years of people in politics stepping down. I think we need to keep the people that have been there. This has been one of the strongest working experiences that I've had, a part of housing, the police, the environment. I would say please vote for myself, Judy and Russell to carry on the work we've done fighting for you and to keep some of the experience back into the States Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the candidates' contributions. Before we close, I want to say just a thanks for a few. Thank you for all of you for coming along this evening and your time. I think that's, I'm sure all the candidates greatly appreciate that, certainly. And thank you for your questions. I think you've certainly put that and given the candidates some big challenges this evening. I want to thank the candidates for keeping to time, because I think if anybody's run over, it's me probably, but nonetheless, I think they have kept the speeches to time. Thank you for the timekeeper, thank you for the video team, and so on. I think, but finally, I want you to show your appreciation for all the candidates and do so in the usual way.